Political violence demands moral clarity, not partisan spin. In this exchange, Representative Becca Balint presses FBI Director Kash Patel on whether the Bureau and the administration are responding to political violence equally or selectively, based on ideology and party affiliation.
Let me say at the top, political violence should have no place in this country, and I strongly, unequivocally condemn the killing of Charlie Kirk last week. And this is exactly the kind of case that warrants a swift and thorough investigation by the FBI. What shouldn't be happening, however, is this administration's seeming attempt to exploit Mr. Kirk's death within minutes of this horrible, horrible assassination, dividing us even further without knowing enough about the killer's complicated, confused political ideology and the extent of his motivation. And this week, Vice President Vance claimed that this is, quote, an extremely destructive movement of left-wing extremism, and said that, quote, it's part of the reason why Charlie was killed. He pledged to go after organizations on the left. But Director Patel, it was just 3 months ago that Melissa Hortman, the Minnesota House Speaker, and her husband, Mark, were shot to death in their home in the middle of the night by a self-identified right-wing extremist and Trump supporter. When that assassination happened, the FBI released a written statement denouncing the killings and pledging to hold the killer accountable. And I thank the Bureau for that. It was clear, concise, to the point. But when you compare that statement to the over 50 mentions of the Charlie Kirk killing and just 4 for the Hortmans on accounts affiliated with the FBI and your personal account, it appears to many Americans that you're valuing some lives more than others, and that's painful. And this is what I'm hearing from my constituents, so I just want to convey that to you. And the vice president didn't even call on right-wing organizations to tone down their rhetoric after that horrific killing in Minnesota, and he never once spoke about dismantling conservative institutions. This week, when the president was asked by a reporter about Speaker Hortman, he claimed he didn't even know who she was. One of the most high-profile assassinations of an elected official in recent memory, and the president claims to know nothing about it, hasn't even heard of it. It was absolutely devastating for her colleagues and for her family. And I think we all can agree in this room that we have to stop this political violence. So my first question to you is, Director Patel, what is your plan as director of the FBI to turn down the temperature, especially in light of the fact that it seems like members of the administration are reacting to political violence based on party affiliation? What's your plan?
I can only speak for myself and the FBI. And what we are doing is, I think I mentioned earlier, we're following the money, because whatever attack you are describing, and they are all despicable, equally so, people need money to operate. People need money to conduct these attacks, to conduct these investigations. And so what we are doing is finding the people that supported this infrastructure system, because even when you say there's a lone, quote unquote, lone wolf actor, he's not truly a lone wolf actor. Something happened along the way. I
agree. And so can I just because we have such little time, are you making a commitment right now to follow where the evidence goes in investigating whether it's violence on the left or the right? Because over the last 10 years, when you look at the ideology, I want to follow up on what my colleague from California said. When you look at the data, you look at the Anti-Defamation League data, 96% of ideological motivated killings were committed by the right wing. When you look at the Institute of Justice report that she cited, it's 5 times the number that 5 times the number of far left extremist incidents are perpetrated by far right. And it's been reported, and she mentioned this, that as of September 12th, 2025, just 2 days after Charlie Kirk's killing, that the DOJ removed that report from the DOJ website. That's why Americans are concerned that there seems to be a separate system of justice, that if you are a Republican and you are attacked, you will get the full weight and authority of the FBI in this administration. But if you are somebody serving in the Minnesota State Legislature and you are assassinated in your home, that the response is different. And I think to ignore the threats from the right or try to do a both and when there are multiple instances when it's overwhelmingly coming from the right, this is a disservice because Americans want to know that whoever they are, whatever their political affiliation, that the response is going to be the same. And it is going to be done with the same diligence. And I'm wondering if you will commit to me right now that you will be a voice right now standing up to those voices in the administration that are adding to the violent rhetoric right now. That's what I'm asking you. Will you commit to this?
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The gentleman can respond.
My voice will be through the investigations that the FBI conducts, and we will conduct them all lawfully and equally.
Can we expect in the future that your tweets in related to one killing will be the same level of concern?
This exchange highlights a deep and unresolved problem in how political violence is discussed, contextualized, and responded to at the highest levels of government. Representative Balint begins by doing what should be uncontroversial, condemning political violence in all forms and demanding a serious, fact-driven response from law enforcement. Her remarks are not partisan theatrics. They are an attempt to confront a growing perception that the federal response to violence is becoming uneven, reactive, and politically selective. At the heart of her concern is not simply the murder of Charlie Kirk, tragic as it was, but how quickly that tragedy was framed and deployed as evidence of left-wing extremism before investigators had even established motive or networks. Balint contrasts this with the assassination of Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, an ideologically driven right-wing attack that received far less sustained attention from national leaders and FBI-affiliated messaging. The imbalance, she argues, is not just rhetorical. It sends a message to the public that the value of a victim's life may depend on political alignment rather than the severity of the crime. This perception matters because law enforcement legitimacy depends on consistency. When one act of violence is amplified repeatedly, while another is acknowledged briefly and then fades, communities are left wondering whether justice is truly blind or selectively focused. Balint reinforces this point by referencing data from long-standing research institutions, including the Anti-Defamation League and Justice Department studies, which have consistently shown that the majority of ideologically motivated killings in the United States over the past decade stem from right-wing extremism. Her argument is not that violence exists on only one side, but that policy and rhetoric should reflect empirical reality rather than political convenience. The reported removal of DOJ research on domestic extremism shortly after Kirk's killing intensifies those concerns. Even the appearance that evidence is being sidelined undermines confidence in federal institutions. Americans expect law enforcement agencies to follow facts wherever they lead, especially when those facts complicate prevailing narratives. When officials emphasize both sides without acknowledging disproportionality, it risks flattening reality and obscuring where the greatest threats actually lie. Director Patel's response, that the FBI will speak through lawful, equal investigations, addresses process, but not perception. Investigations are essential, but leadership also requires clarity, restraint, and consistency in public messaging. Tweets, statements, and silence all carry weight. When the federal government appears quicker to condemn violence against one group than another, it creates a credibility gap that investigations alone cannot close. Balint's final question, whether the FBI director will actively push back against political rhetoric that inflames violence, goes to the core of institutional responsibility. Americans are not asking for ideological alignment from law enforcement. They are asking for equal urgency, equal visibility, and equal moral clarity when lives are lost to political hatred. Without that, the danger is not only continued violence, but the slow erosion of trust in the institutions tasked with preventing it. In a moment when political violence is becoming more frequent and more normalized, neutrality cannot mean silence, and balance cannot mean ignoring data. Equal justice requires equal seriousness, regardless of party, ideology, or who benefits from the narrative.